اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وسلم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا السماء انفطرت وإذا الكواكب انتصرت وإذا البحار فجرت وإذا القبور بعثرت علمت نفس ما قدمت وأخرت. يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلق فسواك فعدلك في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك. كلا بل تكذبون بالدين إن عليكم لحافظين كراما كاتبين يعلمون ما تفعلون. إن الأبرار لفي نعيم وإن الفجار لفي جحيم يصلونها يوم الدين وما هم عنها بغائبين. وما أدراك ما يوم الدين ثم ما أدراك ما يوم الدين يوم لا تملك نفس لنفس شيئا والأمر يومئذ لله. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وسلم.
جزاك الله خير. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
You can go there. Go. You have to back up a little.
صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
अमल में हुर्रे दिलावर حسین تھے عزم و عمل میں ہرے دلاور حسین تھے ارے قاسم حسین تھے علی اکبر حسین تھے قاسم حسین تھے علی اکبر حسین تھے ارے معصومیت کی شرط ہٹا کر تو دیکھیے واللہ کربلا میں 72 حسین تھے عزم و عمل میں ہرے
اللهم صل على
زینب کی بہن تھے شہید دلگیر الوداع زینب کی بہن تھے شہید دلگیر الوداع میں بھائی حضرت شبیر الوداع زینب کی بہن تھے شہید دلگیر الوداع اب چھٹ کے قید شام سے جاتا ہے قافلہ بن بھائی کے چلی ہے ہم شیر الوداع زینب کے بہن تھے شہید دلگیر الوداع پوچھیں جو سب وطن میں کہ شبیر کیا ہوئے کیا دے جواب زینب دلگیر الوداع زینب کے بہن تھے شہید دلگیر الوداع اکبر ہیں ابنا قاسم و جعفر جہان میں باقی ہے ایک عابد دلگیر الوداع زینب کے بہن تھے ارے عباس اٹھو آکے بہن کو کرو سوار ارے جاتی ہے اب وطن کو یہ ہم شیر الوداع زینب کے بہن تھے ارے ہوں دیر سے پکارتی دیتے نہیں جواب اب رہ گئی بہن کے تو خیر الوداع زینب کے بہن تھے
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Yes, but let's take it in one. Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. جب کاروان سید ابرار لوٹ چکا کرب و بلا میں دین کا گلزار لوٹ چکا بن میری آز حیدر کرار لوٹ چکا جنگل میں باغ احمد مختار لوٹ چکا جنگل میں باغ احمد مختار لوٹ چکا ارے اولاد فاطمہ پا جفاؤں کا دور ہے ارے آل نبی کے گھر میں بلاؤں کا دور ہے آل نبی کے گھر میں بلاؤں کا دور ہے ارے لاشیں پڑے ہوئے ہیں شہیدوں کے خاک پر ظالم جلا چکے ہیں نبی ذاتیوں کا گھر سیدانیاں ہے نلوائے آدم ننگے سر ارے تو اور بیڑی پہنے ہیں سجاد نامور تو اور بیڑی پہنے ہیں سجاد نامور ارے وارث تو سر کٹائے ہوئے رن میں سوتے ہیں ظلم و ستم حسین کے کنبے پا ہوتے ہیں ظلم و ستم حسین کے کنبے پا ہوتے ہیں ارے رو کر سکینہ بولی میری جان جاتی ہے یہ لاش میرے قلب و جگر کو ہلاتی ہے اے مرنے والے بے کسی تیری رلاتی ہے بابا کے خون کی بو مجھے لاش سے آتی ہے زینب پکاری کوفے کے میں ماں کی لاش ہے ارے بیٹی کرو سلام کے امو کی لاش ہے بیٹی کرو سلام کے امو کی لاش ہے ارے پھر بولیاں سلام علیک اسیر ماں غربت میں بھائی تم بھی ہوئے راہیے عدم تم پر کیے ہیں کوفیوں نے کیا ستم غسل و کفن نہ تم کو دیا کر کے سر قلم ارے کنبے سے ایسے بچھڑے جہاں سے گزر گئے راستہ نہ دیکھا بھائی کا پہلے ہی مر گئے جب کاروان سید اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
Like for all mu'mineen to recite one Surah Al-Fatiha for all mu'mineen, especially for brother and Ali Naqvi's father also. Please remember him for Surah Al-Fatiha. All right, salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Surah Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa habibi qulubina wa tabibi nufusina wa shafi'i dhunubina bil qasim Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل.
Respected Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, and respected young people who assisted me yesterday with the talk. First of all, thank you so much. You were my collaborator yesterday, and I appreciate that very much. Today, I have posted here on the ladies' side, just if you can just the notes, the summary of the 3 days of discussion, the key points. You can just take a picture of that, and that can stay with you, and you can go back and reflect on that. So today is our wrap-up session. This is our third and final session. We started the discussion by discussing question number 1, that why Azadari? Second day we recognized, or we at least attempted to, why Islam? And today we will focus on why I, or why me, meaning that what's the reason behind my existence. So these were the 3 things. Today is a special day because we stand with these millions of people who are walking in Iraq. What a spectacular show of power and strength for Tashayyo, and also what an amazing accomplishment that as soon as things tilted in our favor, you had the largest annual gathering of humankind, peaceful human gathering, in which happens in Karbala and Najaf. So that itself is a mu'jiza, is a miracle, and I think that we should all be very, very thankful to God for giving us the opportunity. It's also an indication for what's coming, and something that we have been talking about aggressively in the last few days about the Zawr of Imam. So today we focus on the why I exist. So just to reflect back on people who joined us today, just a very brief high level, we recognize that the why question for Azadari is that Azadari exists so that we can protect Islam to facilitate Zuhur, the return of Imam. Number 2, why Islam? Islam is the why part of Islam because Islam, real Islam, is a system designed to protect the rights of people, legitimate rights of people. So it empowers people, it establishes justice in the world, and that is why it's a worthy system to follow. It's a sustainable system which will stay in this world as long as we continue to understand the real face of Islam. The third question we had was that why do I exist? So what is my role? The answers are actually based on the same concept. We defined a concept of oppression yesterday, which in Quranic terminology was tawud. And then we defined the concept of wilayat yesterday, which is how authority manifests in society. The ultimate authority resides with Allah. Then Allah gives that authority, wilayat, to Prophet and to Imams. And that is the transfer of authority that happens in society, how authority is distributed, how power, how control of this universe is distributed. And this is all over here. You can take a picture of that. So, but what is our role in that? Well, there are two types of oppressions that we are responsible for. One is an internal oppression, which is nafs, that takes place within us, in which we are constantly trying to overcome the internal oppression that exists in a person. Whether you're aggravated, angry, frustrated, or any kind of that emotional state in which you can behave irrationally in terms of Islam, and you can make decisions that increase pain and suffering for others, that is your internal oppression. Happens all the time. Throughout the day, it happens, the decisions we make, how they hurt people, and everything. This is really essentially, in some ways, the definition of sin. Sin is never independent of social impact. It's a very important thing to understand. Anytime you're thinking that you're committing a sin, even though you're alone, there's always a social component somewhere. Someone said, well, what if I commit suicide? Well, okay, it only affects me. No, it does not affect you, which is a grave sin. It affects everyone. It affects the entire society. What about, if I don't pray? Well, if you're not praying, maybe you're setting an example for someone else not to pray. What if I am watching something bad? Well, you're supporting an industry that exists that because of watchers like you, people who are watching those bad things, that industry is the same. So every sin has a social impact which is related to it. So that's why keep that in mind, that in some ways, the reason Allah has chosen the system of Islam for us, because it's designed to eliminate oppression at all levels. The second oppression is external oppression. So a lot of ulama who come here, and we have very, very good. We're so fortunate to have excellent ulama in our community, and they usually discuss about the internal oppression part, overcoming the internal oppression, which is overcoming your nafs and trying to manage yourself, behave properly. And then the second part, external oppression, which is important to discuss, is that Taghut, powerful people who influence decisions in this world that impact an average person, is also, and those decisions that increase suffering for people, is also something that the Sharia Islam stands up against. So that is something which is a collective responsibility of all of us. So it's not just about overcoming our own nafs and then saying, okay, allow this zone to continue, this oppression to continue, whatever it is, because it has nothing to do with us. That's not who we are. Standing against zone is in our DNA, it runs in our blood. This is our history, that's who we are. That's why when I explained to you the era of Prophet was defining wilayat on one side and creating a profile of Taghut on the other side. It's Taghut against Ibrahim, who thinks that he's a king and he has God powers. Same thing with Pharaoh, who thinks that he is God. Same thing, Jesus' life. Moneylenders, powerful people, they think they can exploit and manipulate people. Jesus says, no, I will not let you do that. So profile of wilayat on one side, profile of Taghut, oppressors on the other side. The entire era of prophets is training us to understand the difference between these two. As I mentioned to you, no battle took place between prophets and Taghut. That was prophet against shepherds, prophet against cooks, prophet against blacksmiths. No, it was always about kings. It was always about people of power and queens. So these were the people of power who were misusing their authority, misusing their power, and God's solution for that was power must reside with a Masum, because that way power cannot be manipulated, power cannot be exploited, people cannot be exploited. That was Allah's solution for you, and that's why we believe in a system of wilayat. So I read an ayat first day when I was here, which I did not explain. I was keeping it for this day. The opening ayat from Quran, just chapter 76 and 7th ayat, which is very simple translation, is that very simple few words ayat, that you think that this day is impossible or far away, but this day is very close. We will make this day very close. This is about, if you think about it, and we have been told this ayat is being is part of dua ahead also, which means the dua of commitment, the dua of allegiance to your imam. And in that, towards the end, this dua appears. This is from a direct quote from Quran as part of that dua. So that essentially means this is giving us clues about that we need to live our lives thinking about and expecting and praying for Imam Sabur. And those are the conditions, because that is where ultimate justice will get established in this on this planet. And that is why keeping that concept in mind is important at all times. So internal oppression fighting, external oppression awareness, and a movement of justice which Karbala has given us and which Azadari reinforces is our way of life. Now, some people say, well, what if Imam does not appear next week, next month, next year, next 10 years, next 20 years, next 50 years, 100 years? And I think all of us believe that we will believe that Imam can appear anytime and live our lives as such. And I would rather live my life believing that and die believing that can happen anytime than to start believing that justice will never be restored on this planet. Very important concept. Very important concept to recognize that it's important for us to constantly believe in that. We prepare our 401ks, we prepare our retirement plans, we make plans for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. What if realistically speaking, I really ask this question, is it all a story for us? If it's not a story, then realistically speaking, can Zuhur not happen in, let's say, 2022 or 2023 or 2024? It can happen, and we have to expect and believe in that. That's what we pray for all the time. And conditions, look at the conditions around what are transpiring globally. So pay attention to that what's happening. That's an important part. So we discussed yesterday that Islam defends the rights of people who cannot defend themselves, legitimate rights of people. And this Islam and Tashayyo, especially Tashayyo part of Islam, is the only religion in the world. In fact, the only system in the world that makes this claim. That I am here, the purpose of my existence, the reason I exist in this world as a religion is to bring justice to the world. There are many other religions. Religions have rituals in them. Atheism and other, if you're an atheist, you don't believe in God. There's the underlying philosophy typically in atheism is existentialism, which means that I exist just to live my life. I don't have a destination after death. I'll just live through this life, maximize a utilitarian type of philosophy, just maximize my utility in this world, and that's what my life is for. So that's not a movement that can care for establishing social justice. Why would they care? It's about maximizing your own life. So atheism is not a solution, in any way is not a solution for this world. Other religions who were given by Allah, God, for example, other religions, all of them, they have those concepts, but from an application perspective, when applying perspective, they have all reached to this conclusion that we will separate political, economic, and social power from religion. So religion becomes a very personal matter, but not applied in establishing justice, not applied in any way in establishing justice. So now you have two separate systems, often competing with each other. Religious values, great values, all religions, great values, but then this is the political, social, economic system, completely different, doesn't care about those values. So people may say, well, these are Christian values, these are great values, Judaism, great values, but no, we cannot apply them because we have this separation. Islam, especially Tashayyu Islam, says, no, you know what? These values are important. And Islam does not exist outside of political, social, and economic systems. That's why you have Islamic finance, a totally Islamic finance, a branch of finance, which is within Islam. So, and it has been recognized globally that this is true. And even the political part of Islam should not be termed as political Islam because it's not. It is all part of our belief. What can we do that if we decided as a nation that we will continue to keep our belief intact and we will not give up to the temptations or the fear of this world? It's not our fault. We believe in that. We're supposed to believe in that, and other people can make different decisions. Fine. But that's not who we are. So Tashayyu takes a stand against oppression. And we're proud of that because, again, as I mentioned, this is in our DNA. This is in our blood. It doesn't matter where things happen. It doesn't matter that if it happens to another community, as long as there is injustice and as long as there is violation of legitimate rights of people, Tashayyu will stand for that. That's the lesson of Kabbalah. That's the lesson of Hussein. So let's say that, in oppression, whether it is on the political side, on the economic side, or on the social side. What is social side oppression? Like I mentioned to you, that all of these industries, drugs, gambling, alcohol, pornography, other sin industries, no contribution to the civilization. Nothing except destruction. Just destroying people, destroying families, destroying neighborhoods, destroying people's lives. We cannot accept that and embrace that ideology because it is social oppression, so we stand against that. Economic oppression, what is economic oppression? Well, every few years we have these economic crashes. We lend money to people who cannot pay that off so we can take over their assets every few years. And there is tremendously, and this is not me talking, there's tremendous research, academic research to show that what kind of economic oppression exists. We're the richest nation in the world, and we cannot give healthcare to our people. Think about that, right? We cannot give healthcare to our people. What is that? Isn't that social and economic oppression? So those are the things we need to think about, that the things that we are not ready to give up our values. We're not ready to believe that we will not pursue these values because they're part of our religion. The same thing, it comes, so Tashayyu stands with people. Do we have any evidence for that at a global level? I'll give you several examples. Who defends Christian communities in Iraq? Tashayyu. And Syria, right? Exactly. Who defends Yazidis, which is a monotheistic religion, however, very different than Islam? Who defends Yazidis in Iraq? Tashayyu. Who stopped Shias from revenge killing of Sunnis after Saddam's fall? Ayatollah Sistani, nominated for a Nobel Prize. He said, no, I don't need your Nobel Prize. Keep your Nobel Prizes with you. I don't care about that. My values are more than enough for me. That's Tashayyu, right? That's your Shiism. It's defending. Who stands for Christians in Sunnis, Christian communities and Sunni communities in Palestine? Tashayyu, right?
What is a Shayyu?
The Shia means Shia Islam.
Yeah.
Oh,
Shia
okay.
Islam.
Okay.
Sorry.
Shia Islam.
The
Okay.
Sharia word is
Okay.
different. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm very happy that you asked the question, so I really appreciate that.
Oh, you will?
So you-
I have
you're-
another question.
So-
Jazakallah.
Salawat. So who stands with the Christian and Sunni communities in Palestine, the Sharia? Who stands and defends and is allied with Christian communities in Lebanon, the Sharia? Right? It's take any country where you go. Who protects the largest Jewish community outside of Israel in Middle East, in Iran? The Sharia. Largest Jewish community outside of Israel is in Iran. So, and there was an article, you can do search on that, USA Today, 2018, 2019 articles, but that community doesn't want to leave Iran, they want to stay there. So everything that's political and propaganda and fights between it at that level is a different thing. We talk about religion. We're talking about religion and we're just trying to accumulate evidence of how the Sharia works. The Sharia is making the Jewish community feel comfortable in Iraq. The Sharia is making Christian community feel comfortable in Iraq, in Syria, and in other places. So, and then let's move on to Pakistan. So Pakistan, from last 20 years or so many attacks happen in Pakistan against the Sharia, against Shia communities, in graveyards, in cemeteries, in mosques, in schools, in Afghanistan also. Was there ever a revenge attack in a Sunni mosque by Shias? Was there ever a revenge attack by Shias to kill women and children? And never. You have 20, 30 years of history. No matter what, our Ayatollahs will never approve anything like that. Peaceful community stands for justice, ready to die to defend other people's rights, but will never be oppressive. Never go out and become terrorists. That's the Sharia. That's the powerful the Islam that we follow. And and we don't do this because it's cool. We don't do this because it looks good or people will praise us. Like I said, Ayatollah Sistani refused the nomination for Nobel Prize. We do it because that's who we are. That's why, because we trace our roots all the way back to Prophet Adam, all the way, and we study oppression, and we're followers of Imam Ali. There is no way we can become like other people. So now, this is the system of wilayah. Go ahead.
You said a word earlier, Rasakun or Rashun. What is that? What is the word?
The what?
You said a word Rasun or Rasakun or something like that. It was early in the speech. It was not Rasul. It was Raskan or something.
I don't recall the word. Maybe after the majlis, if you can hear it and play the video,
Okay.
and then
okay.
you can
And
email
I'll
me.
ask someone
Sure.
what it means.
Or
Thank
you can absolutely, or you can email me. I'll be able to help you there.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, system of wilayat. You're welcome. System of wilayat is a system establishes how authority is distributed in society. As I mentioned to you, ultimate authority resides with Allah. Allah gives authority to Prophet. Prophet gives Prophet, and Allah give authority to Imams. Now Imams have this authority over us, and Imams give authority to select supreme ulama in the absence of Imam, while Imam is in ghaibat. So they our ulama now represent us, represent Imam as our wali. And obviously, Imam is Amana, is our wali. We're not an orphan nation, as I said to you yesterday, that we have people who watch over us. This is where now I'm going to change the path and discuss a little bit, going back to now, hopefully all the younger people are very comfortable in understanding the concept of wilayah. I assume that you are all comfortable with that.
I don't know what it means.
That authority resides with God, Allah, ultimate authority for the universe. And then Allah has given that authority to Prophet.
And this word is what now?
Authority meaning, wilaya.
Walaya?
Yeah, wilaya.
Walaya or walaya?
Wilaya. WILAH. Think of it that way.
Walaya.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then wilaya. And then
And that's I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Sure,
interrupt
sure,
you,
please.
but that's the succession of authority.
succession of authority, exactly, and distribution of authority.
Okay.
Distribution of authority in society. So in other words, that we don't recognize any authority that falls outside of this masum authority.
That's the word you said.
Masum means the pure imams. Pure.
Okay, that's the word you said.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Glad you asked.
Alhamdulillah.
Salawat. That is where the events at Radid become very, very important. So, Prophet, in front of 100,000 people, transfers authority or tells people that the way I was your master, now Ali is your master, meaning that all the authority that I had over you, and Prophet obviously has the ultimate authority, the ultimate allegiance that we owe to Prophet, that now Ali will have that authority. That's Radid. That is the event of Radid. That was denied 2 months and 10 days after Prophet's death. And Saqifa, which we all know that what happened, the events of Saqifa, where people came together, a few people, two parties came together, decided who will be going forward, the person who will be granted the authority over Muslim communities. Even though Prophet was only 2 months, 10 days, in 70 days or so, people forgot what was told to them by Prophet himself. And people who were there, they all said, Bakin, or they all said, wah, wah. They all said, wow, Prophet, when Prophet was telling them. But then 2 months, 10 days later, things changed completely. That is a very important issue to understand because it's often communicated to us in terms of that Imam's right was denied. And that is a true explanation. Imam's right was denied. But if what we have established in last 3 days means anything, which is the reason Islam exists, is to give rights to people and bring justice to this world, by denying that right, you're denying the right of the entire humanity that could have benefited from that, if Imam would have gotten that role. So think about this, very, very important. So it's not just about that the right of Khilafat was denied to Imam Ali, but through that, how it affected the entire world. Because it perpetuated zulm, it perpetuated oppression, and we saw that just a few years later, 30 years later or so, Banu Umayyah takes power. Banu Umayyah takes power, becomes extremely powerful in the world of Islam, and all the evils that we talked about, the profile that we developed throughout all of those prophets, the oppressors who fought against them, the profile of Tawud was there present in Muawiyah and his son. So think about this, that the mistake of Saqifa was not just limited to denying the right of one person, it was denying the entire human civilization the benefit of the guidance, the control, and the direction that a Masum could have provided had that authority been given to him, or if it was allowed for him to go and take control of that. So we suffer today. Because of that decision, the entire humankind suffers today. And one would say, well, how can you How can you claim that? Then a lot of people go and argue about the events that took place at that time. And there are many, many very learned ulama who have analyzed those facts. And I'm sure that all of you know a lot about that. I am going to give you a different angle today to analyze. Remember something we discussed that sometimes in the first lecture, that we cannot detach history from present and future. The mistake we make is we compartmentalize history into that chamber of history as if it happened there, has nothing to do with our present and our future. So we analyze history for the sake of analyzing history, and that's important to do that. But once we bring that history to today, to our present and our future, it changes the scope. It changes how we analyze and see things. Here's the point. We don't have to go 1400 years back to see the impact of that decision. We can go back 14 years, we can go back 14 months, we can go back 14 days, we can go back 14 hours, and we can see that impact. Let me give you some examples. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajjal farid.
The rulers who follow a different type of Islam, we have those examples today. And there's nothing wrong in that Islam, except that the authority part, the wilayat part is not there. And imagine the difference that it makes, right? So I'll give you some examples just by not having that important part of wilayat, how that system itself falls apart. The rulers on that side think that diplomacy, so we're going back about just 14 months, global events that happened 14 months, are thinking that by kneeling in front of oppressors and oppressive powers, and by disgracing themselves, they will attain something important. That's what they define as progress. The system of wilayat, the Sharia, different concept. We say standing against the oppressors is our preferred way of doing things. Okay? So rulers on the other side, where system of wilayat is not there, think that progress means establishing casinos, building sin cities, bringing all these sin businesses over there, legalizing alcohol. They feel pride in that. That look, we're making this liberalism work here. They call it liberalism. That's their mindset about liberalism.
Doesn't all that what you talk about going in Mecca?
It can be anywhere. So we see
Well,
this
I'm just
movement.
asking, did they legalize
No.
alcohol in
No,
Saudi
not-
Arabia?
Well, not in my knowledge, not there. But there are a lot of plans that are being put in play there. So, but the Sharia, we think that we need to build more educational centers and mosques. That's the difference. They want to build casinos, we want to build mosques. Okay. They think that blowing up girls' schools and denying education to girls is an accomplishment. We think 70% of girls women population with college degrees in some Tashayo places is still too less. We need to get it over to 100. See the difference? They want to blow up girls' schools. We want to build even more universities. Their rulers think that the only way to make progress is to buy or bribe, bring people in by buying them, by bringing things over. We believe that the best way to make progress is to advance in science and technology, whether it's biotechnology, whether it's physics, whether it's medicine, anything. The Sharia today is leading in many scientific and technology fields. So, again, see the consequences of the decision in Saqifa, how it's impacting lives today. So they think that even destroying cemeteries and graveyards is an accomplishment for them. They destroy cemeteries, even graveyards and cemeteries, while we build mausoleums, we build imams rozas. Think about that. The difference in ideology is becoming clear, that even cemeteries are destroyed by them, and we're building mausoleums. They think that they can achieve greatness by bombing innocent civilians, while we are protecting rights of people all over the world. So that is a difference. And 14 hours ago, when I mentioned, so these are all 14 years, 14 months examples, 14 weeks examples. Well, just 14 hours ago, Hassanzadeh Amri, Ayatollah Hassanzadeh Amri, who passed away, bring me one intellectual on the other side, who is not from the Wilayat concept, from the other side, who matches that profile. And we have hundreds, alhamdulillah, of scholars like that. One,
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajjal faraj.
1.5 billion people cannot bring one person like Ayatollah Amri. Mathematics, religion, physics, all of those expertise, mysticism. Why? Why are we producing those? The system of wilayat. The system of wilayat. The difference between an oppressive system and a system of wilayat. So at some point, someone who looks at the present and where these things are moving should finally own up to the part that that was not the right decision. Saqifa. See, we can go back and argue in history on why that was the wrong decision, or we can just see now what has happened. Two systems have produced very different results. We're only 10% in the world, 10% Muslims. But look at the accomplishments that we're making, alhamdulillah. This is not with pride. This is just a matter of fact that our belief in our Imam has given us this power. And so this is the power of the Sharia. This is the power of the Sharia, and someone has to own up to the fact that that was the wrong decision. If a Masoom would have gotten the power then, things would have been very different. A Masoom can get power today, and that is what we look for. When we pray for our Imam's return, that's what we're hoping for. That is the concept. So the pure concept, now we complete our discussion, and I hope that you can think about this now. We have solved the why question of why does Islam exist? Islam exists because it eliminates oppression. It gives legitimate rights to people. That is the core essence of Islam. Why do we exist? To overcome internal oppression against sin that comes in from our nafs, as well as to challenge the external oppression that exists outside at a system level, political, economic, social system. Wherever there's injustice, the Sharia stands for that, against that. That's our policy. That's in our DNA. That's our ideology. That's who we are. And we will never forget that. We will never. So in other words, I say this, that we have to be very respectful with our brothers and sisters of other sects. They are. So Sunnis are our brothers and sisters. They are believers. They are our brothers. But at the same time, we deserve the right to respectfully disagree on certain things. We cannot, and we respect their right to do that as well. So we should not be forced to change our beliefs, and they shouldn't be forced to change their beliefs. All we are saying is, and what that means is that no one should ever expect that the Shias of Imam will ever forget or forgive the atrocities committed against Ahlul Bayt. We cannot do that. If there's one Shia left in this world, that will not happen. We will never forget that. We will never forgive. But that does not mean that we will not respect other people. We will not love other people. Yes, we love them. We respect them. They're brothers and sisters. And slowly, they will recognize, as the examples that I gave you, they will recognize the weakness that exists. I gave you 14 hours back. Bring me one scholar like Ayatollah Amali, why not? Bring me one institution like Qom or Najaf, why not? Why is because of we survive in the system of wilayah and we focus on real issues, real oppression, and that's what we stand for. And we hope that our Sunni brothers and sisters would recognize the power of wilayah, the system of wilayah, but that's obviously that's up to them. And now, please read the salawat. So, based on my analysis, there are two very important launch events in the history of human civilization. The first launch event was the beginning of the era of prophethood. And we discussed yesterday that how Prophet Adam was the first prophet who came, and then he started this era of prophets that ended at Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
So the era of imams start without prophets. So the end of era of prophethood. Obviously, Hazrat Ibrahim was also an imam, and so prophets were imam. But the era of imams, after the era of prophets has ended, starts with Imam Ali. As Prophet Imam Ali alayhi salam, as Prophet announced at Ghadir. Now, the question is that what is the critical link between the era of prophets and the era of imams wilayah? That link is Sayyida Fatima salamullah alayha. The daughter of prophet, the mother of imams, the wife of imams. Think about that. That's the link. That's the link. And then when she gives her khutbah because of father, which was a parcel of property, which was again denied to her, legitimate right was denied to her by the first caliph, and she goes to Medina Mosque and gives a khutbah. That khutbah can be interpreted two ways. So Bibi goes over there to give that khutbah in Medina, the mosque. People are sitting over there. So curtains like this are drawn over there. She sits on one side. There are other women who go with her, and she sighs. And as soon as she sighs, people start crying. And she starts crying. There's so much crying over there that even men on the other side, they were crying. So this is after Prophet's death. It's after Prophet's death. So then silence is restored as people calm down. That's when she starts her khutbah. So there are two interpretations of that khutbah that you can think of. One is that she is going and declaring her right for that parcel of land. But as I will discuss with you, some of the things that are mentioned in the khutbah have nothing to do with the land. The second interpretation that we can have is, which a lot of people do, ulama do, and that is also a possible explanation, that she's communicating this message. This is targeted toward the first caliph who was denying the right, the legitimate right, her right. So, but again, the content of the khutbah, when I go through that, is very different than either one of those explanations, although those explanations, those things are embedded within that khutbah, but the khutbah is much broader and has very meaningful content, which is meant for not just the oppressors, but also the followers of Ahl Bayt, reminding them of their responsibilities, as well as reintroducing the entire religion and explaining it with answering the why question. Remember, this whole 3 days were about answering the why questions. And she starts by, so I will just read some parts to it, and I insist, and it's part of the suggested readings that I have, that you read the translation of that khutbah. It's phenomenal. It's life-changing when you think about that. So she's talking one beautiful thing about Ahl Bayt when they talk about how Allah created, what Allah's will is. That itself is a proof of who they are, because they're talking with such confidence, that knowing that this is Allah's will to do this, it is Allah's will to do that, and that tells you the power of Masoom, the insights of a Masoom that they have. So she says, and this is the third or fourth paragraph, she starts the speech by saying that praise be to Allah for His bounties. She starts with that and thanking Allah, and then she says, He's the one who created. He is the one, about Allah, who created all things without any past prototype and originated them without having any past image and equals. Rather, He created them with His might and dispersed them according to His will. He did not create them for a need. See the power of her speech? People actually said that when she walked, she talked, it reminded them of Prophet. Just even her walk was reminding them of Prophet. Nor did He shape them for a benefit for Himself, but rather He did all of this to establish His wisdom and to bring the creatures, our attention to His obedience and manifest His might, and so that His creatures may venerate Him. That is the power of Ahl Bayt's speech. So she starts, that's the first part, is about Allah. First part is about Allah, and then she talks about Prophet. And she says, I bear witness that my father Muhammad is His slave, about Allah, and His messenger, while Allah, the Almighty, chose him and selected him before bestowing prophethood upon him, and named him before selecting him, and chose him before sending him. So now she's talking about Prophet. It has nothing to do with the parcel land or the further issue. She is completely talking about a different issue. So then she goes into talking about Quran, that the importance of Quran. And she says that you are the slaves of Allah and you're the establishers of His commands and prohibitions. You're the possessors of His religion, His revelation, and trustworthy ones with regards to yourselves, and you should propagate Islam to other nations while you deem yourselves worthy of all this. This is talking to people. This is talking to us. This is talking to everyone and the people, Ansar and Muhajirin, who were present over there. So she's talking to the two groups who were there, as well as the messages to the entire community. Then she comes in and she describes something beautiful. Look at the whys here, the answers to all the Faruadeen that we talked about. She's giving now examples, and that was extremely powerful part for me, that she's giving you the philosophy of everything that we often don't pay attention to. Faith has been said to you as to cleanse yourself of kufr, transgression, of anything that goes into kufr, the territory of kufr. Salat, prayers, are prescribed to you to keep you away from pride. See that? Salat, the purpose of Salat is so that arrogance can go away, so that your pride can wash away. Giving the why answers to Faruadeen. She's giving the why answers, the questions that we've been talking about. Zakat, charity, has been prescribed to purify oneself and results in the increase of sustenance. Fasting has been prescribed so that genuineness may be reinforced. Hajj, pilgrimage to Makkah, has been prescribed to establish the religion. Justice is prescribed to establish proper harmony in the hearts, and the obligation to obey Ahl Bayt, us, has been prescribed to set up order in the community, and our authority, imama, has been prescribed to save people from differences. This is not about property, parcel property. This is about announcing the arrival of the era of imams and what it means and our responsibility to them. That's the important part. That, like I mentioned, the two eras, right? Adam starts one era and Bibi starts the second. Sayyida Fatima, Salamullah alaiha, starts the second era.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Struggle is the honor of Islam and a humiliation for the people of kufr and hypocrisy. Patience has been made a medium for recompense to be bestowed. Enjoying good has been prescribed, which is Amal bin Maruf and Hayyan al-Munkar. Enjoying good has been prescribed for the general welfare of the society. Righteousness with one's parents is a safeguard against his, Allah's wrath. Imagine the whys. She's giving that all of those reasons. And kindness with one's relatives is a medium of increasing one's age and results in an increase of friends and relations. Retribution has been prescribed so that people's lives may be safeguarded. Fulfillment of your promises leads to forgiveness, and consideration of accuracy in measurement in weighing commodities saves one from loss. Prohibition of intoxicants has been prescribed so that humanity may remain away from filth. And the prohibition of defaming, of adultery has been prescribed so as to keep oneself away from the curse of Allah. Robbery has been prohibited so that hands may be pure, and kufr has been prohibited so that sincerity may be established in Allah's divinity. What part of that has to do with parcel of land? She is announcing the entire, she's reading the entire religion. She is saying that, okay, Prophet has left us now. And she mentions that later on in the khutbah, and she narrates from Quran and ayat and says that Quran says that prophets pass away. And this is what happened to Prophet Muhammad. And then she talks about Imam Ali. And she says that, look, Imam Ali, he was the one whose right was there. He was the one who defended Islam at all times. All times. Whenever there was risk to Islam, it was Ali who was defending Islam. But his right was denied. So she is now, again, introducing the system of wilayah to us. She's telling us what it means to follow wilayah. And then she recognizes and she says, which is titled by scholars as criticism against the treachery of men. And she says, thus when Allah the Almighty exalted his prophet from this perishable world towards the abode of his prophets, meaning when prophet passed away, the thorns of hypocrisy became manifest in you, and the mantle of your religion gave, and the astray ones who were silent until yesterday suddenly started shrieking. The degraded and mean ones came out of their burrows into the open ground, and the valiant ones of the kufr of falsehood started roaring. See, she's talking about Taluts now who are coming out. They're seeing an opportunity in occupying power. That is the introduction. Extremely powerful khutbah. Extremely powerful. Think about it, the power of that, because it was going to define the next era of imams. That is her job. And then she says, do you then say Muhammad has passed away and there remains no responsibility upon us? That's reminder to the Ummah. So these khutbahs by Ahl Bayt, they are not just meant for so that we can read them and somehow argue based on them with another party, or that we can read them and not really deeply philosophically analyze them. That's our job, is to extract the philosophy of these khutbahs. They are so powerful, they are so important. When you read these words, they look literally out of this world. They look so powerful words. that one can wonder that how even a human can say these words. So powerful. And she's talking about Allah, she's talking about Prophet, she's talking about Imamate and about the rights. And then she mentions a little bit about the incident of Allah. So now we know that, at least based on how I see that, I view that, is that she is announcing the arrival of the era of Imams and Wilayat, what it means, and defining our obligations for that. It wasn't long after, so she finishes her khutbah and she goes to home and she starts crying. She starts crying. Imam Ali is at home. He wasn't there. Imam Ali is at home, and he asked her that what happened, and she's crying so much that she had to sit on the floor. She has to sit on the floor because she cannot hold herself up, and she said, "They mistrusted me, and they want me to bring witnesses." See, they mistrusted me, and they want me to. This is the daughter of Prophet, who just described the entire religion and the word of God in some ways, because we know that there was a book of Fatima that was given to her directly. So we know that her words are the words of Allah. She and of Prophet. She knows these what's happening around her, and she can analyze at that point that how things are changing. When people felt that when Tawhid feels that they need allegiance of the Masoons, they think that they can just walk in and they can force to get that allegiance. It never happened. Every Imam has done a qiyam. If we don't see that, doesn't mean that they offered allegiance. And on that day, now we are approaching the end of life of Fatima Zahra, Salamullah alayha, that when a group of people shows up at her door and Imam Ali is inside the house. And instead of Imam Ali answering the door, Bibi says, she goes to the door and she says, "Who is there?" And she knows who's there. And then she introduces herself, "I am Fatima." Now, a lot of people argue, they say that if Ali himself, who is known for his warriorism, who's known for his ability to fight, why would he allow his wife to go to the door? Now, that's a very important concept, very good question to ask. And because that question is related to what we are seeing, what Lady Fatima is doing now. She is, through her words and through her actions, defining and describing the responsibility of people who are assigned the task of protecting Imams. Through her actions, you actually are a nation of Fatima. You are, because she becomes the first martyr to protect Imam. She becomes the first martyr. She says to Imam Ali, "You stay here. When my father was spreading this religion, every time he was attacked, you were the one who defended him. He was the wali then. You are the wali now, and I am going to defend you." She goes near the door, and when she asks the question, people outside, they are losing patience, aggravated, anger. We talked about the qualities of oppressors. They light fire to the door, and then while the fire is lit, they push the door, and break the door, and the door falls on her. This door, the door falls on her. And there's a nail sticking out of the door that pierces through her body. And she is pregnant at that point and kills her baby. And she knows what has happened. And she falls down. And the next words are hard to say, but it's important to know the history. She falls down, and then they go in. And Imam Ali is now in a completely peaceful state. He can't react. But that's how Imams act, knowing the appropriate time on what is the definition of qiyam at different times. So they put a black rope around his neck and drag him out. As he's coming out, Sayyida Fatima is now on the floor, bleeding, and then she sees Imam Ali is being dragged outside, and she reaches out and grabs him. And then the person who did this actually sent a letter to someone else in which he described what he did. He said that the first thing I did was to pull Ali away from her. But she was holding on so strong that I couldn't do that. So another person was standing next to me. He had a whip. I took a whip from him, and then I smashed it on her arm, and then she had to let go. And Fatima said, Ali, I give you in the hands of Allah now. Fatima passes away the next day. But Sayyida Fatima, we are here to not only offer our condolences on what happens on that day, but what happens to her entire family after that. She said, Ali, I give you in the hands of Allah on that day. But the pain and the suffering of Fatima is not over. It's not over when she passes away. And then her Hussein will be standing alone in Karbala. Her daughter Zainab will be alone on Sham Ghanimat. Her entire family will offer this sacrifice to stand against the oppression. Lanat on these Zalimeen who committed these kind of acts against our Masumeen. And one key point I want to leave you with, again, when you read the translation of Dua, in that Allah is the Imam who has written Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, who has written the Dua, he is calling Imam Mahdi as the son of Prophet's daughter Fatima. So think of it that way, that if we were not able to defend any of our Imams and Masumeens, then we have an opportunity today. Don't leave your Imam alone. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un.